Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, happy Monday. For Joe Biden, the past few months have amounted to the greatest political disaster of his life. And in his case, that's not a small place to be. This is a man with 3 failed presidential campaigns on his resume. But this year has been different. And we don't mean to overstate it, but you can pick your humiliating ashes and sackcloth world historic defeat, Stalingrad, Corregidor, Gallipoli, and that's pretty much where Joe Biden is right now politically. Polls show him losing astounding levels of support from virtually every group of Americans who voted for him just a year ago. That would include Hispanics, moderate Democrats, African Americans, and by big double digits, independents. At this point, the White House is down to just 2 core constituencies: anxious upper-income women with multiple college degrees and barren personal lives, and members of the national news media. And even that may be overstating Biden's support, given that there's such dramatic overlap between those 2 groups. Essentially, they're the same people. And now, because it can always get worse, Biden appears to be losing even the media. This is an ominous development. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that if this trend continues, it is the end of the Biden presidency. The media are the only reason Joe Biden is president in the first place. Biden didn't campaign for the job. He didn't hold rallies or give speeches or tell the public what he might do if elected. No, for nearly a year, Joe Biden stayed home, hiding in terror from infectious voters. Instead, he let news organizations make his case for him, which they assiduously did. The media hid Biden's faults. They attacked and censored his critics. In general, they gave no hint at all that you might be electing a senile mannequin with a lifelong history of sleazy behavior. Voters had no clue. They didn't know who Joe Biden actually was. And yet suddenly, news organizations have decided to tell them. It's pretty amazing to watch it. Here's some clips from just the last few days.
President Joe Biden has had a very tough week with setbacks for his agenda, COVID complications, and the Supreme Court blocking his vaccine mandate.
1 year in, Mr. Biden has the 2nd lowest approval rating ever measured in the White House and has never been less popular nationally.
2022 is not exactly off to a good start for the Biden administration.
The country is frustrated. His party is frustrated. We're 2 weeks into a midterm election year, a few days away from his 1-year anniversary of inauguration, and it is black. It is very dark for him right now.
Now he's in the midst of what one famous children's book writer called a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad time.
Ooh, a very tough week of setbacks. The country is frustrated. That's CNN's assessment. If it sounds mild to you, you should consider the source. CNN criticizing a sitting Democratic president? That's like the College of Cardinals attacking the Pope. It is a violation of ecclesiastical authority. You never see it, and when it happens, it means something. MSNBC went even further than that. One of its contributors decided to come out and tell the channel's viewers something they had never heard before. Joe Biden is old. Really, really old, possibly too old to govern a nation of 335 million people. Watch this.
Your audience is not going to be happy with what I have to say. Is I don't think he's come across as an inspirational figure. I don't think, by the way, I could give a litany of things he's accomplished, and obviously, and Judge Lemire laid out things that have not gone well for him. But there's something else different. How many people do you talk to when they say he seems old? And I don't mean that as an ageist thing. He doesn't, and it really started with Afghanistan, where he just didn't seem to have his hand firmly on the wheel. And I think a lot of this has to do with the messenger versus the messages itself. He doesn't feel in charge.
No, wait a second now. You're telling us that Joe Biden doesn't, quote, seem to have his hand firmly on the wheel. Really? You sure we're talking about the same president here? Wasn't this the guy who not so long ago was challenging strangers to push-up contests at town halls? This is the guy who single-handedly rescued Nelson Mandela from the hell of Robben Island. This is the man who faced down Corn Pop with a chain at a public swimming pool. Now you're saying that man, that chiseled monument to decisive masculinity, may be losing his grip? Yep, that's exactly what they're saying. And they seem almost bashfully apologetic as they say it. They had no idea Joe Biden was a lumbering, desiccated husk. No idea at all. They never saw Biden call anyone a dog-paced pony soldier. They didn't notice him sniffing anybody's hair or staring blankly into the middle distance like a lobotomy patient. They never saw it. They're as shocked as you are. Watch CNN's resident Nobel Prize winner come to the awful conclusion. that maybe Joe Biden isn't doing an amazing job as president.
President Biden left Washington tonight to spend the weekend at home in Delaware. He probably couldn't wait to get out of town after one of the worst weeks of his year-old presidency. A series of setbacks on voting rights, the Supreme Court blocking his vaccine mandate for large businesses, and soaring inflation driving up prices for consumers. And today, we saw the news that the retail sales last month were awful, plus Omicron is still causing havoc with staffing shortages and empty shelves, and some Senate Democrats are upset with the White House over testing shortages. I mean, I could go on, but I mean, is there any, it's a bad week for the president. Is there any way to cut it, other way to say it?
So Joe Biden is never at the White House, and he's right about that, but it's possible CNN missed the larger point. Biden isn't fleeing Washington because he's upset about political defeats. Biden is being dragged into isolation by advisors who are terrified he will get corona like everyone else right now. They want him out of the city as quickly as possible. They know exactly how well masks and vaccines work. They're not betting on Dr. Fauci's guidance, but whatever, details. The point is, CNN is running away from Joe Biden. Even Don Lemon can see where this is going. He may be stupid, but his animal instincts are fully intact. Don Lemon can recognize a sinking ship when he sees one, and he's decided to disembark as swiftly as he can. Make for the lifeboats! CNN anchors first! Maybe if people like Don Lemon repeatedly make disappointed noises about Joe Biden, no one will remember how they sounded a year ago and hold them responsible for this disaster. But we will. We remember. We saved the tape. Here's Don Lemon weeping with joy over Joe Biden's election, like Jesus had just returned to make gym memberships free and forgive everybody's student loans. Watch.
How you feeling? I almost can't talk right now because of the emotion. Everyone is welcome under this tent. We don't care who you are. We don't care if you voted for us or not. You're all part of this American experiment. I was so overwhelmed to hear that. I don't care what people think, if they think I'm biased or not, if whatever, I don't care. And so I'm very emotional. So when you ask me how I'm feeling right now, I'm sorry. That's all I can tell you. This is how I feel right now. I am so happy to have this platform to be able to do this. I may not have it after this, but I really don't care. I am so happy.
We don't care if you voted for us, not Joe Biden, for us, meaning Joe Biden's friends and co-conspirators over at CNN. I really don't care. I'm so happy. That's the tape. There you have it. If this were a trial, that would be the pivotal evidence. The glove fits, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You cannot acquit. The media foisted this Biden calamity on the United States. They got him elected. Then they lied and distracted the population as he and the marionette operators who controlled him wrecked a lot of this country. That happened, and it's too late now to deny responsibility. These people are fully implicated in what they did. Lots of them are. It's not just Don Lemon. Watch this member of Congress from Silicon Valley, one of the smarter members, we've got to say, decide that actually maybe big tech shouldn't have censored legitimate stories, truthful stories about Hunter Biden's laptop after all. Maybe that was a mistake. Watch.
I am not for having either the government or tech companies ultimately be the arbiter of truth. I'm for making sure censorship, that we don't have speech that incites violence, but I'm very wary of censorship. In fact, in the book I write about how I thought it was a mistake for Twitter to take down some of the stuff about Hunter Biden or Facebook to do that, and I think that story was total hogwash. I think Joe Biden was unfairly attacked because of his son, but that doesn't mean that it didn't belong in the public sphere.
Oh, you're not for censorship. Oh, you're not for censorship. Thanks for that, Congressman. Great. But where were you when it mattered? Say, last October, right before the election, when people were trying to figure out who to vote for. Oh, you were staying dead silent like the rest of them. You were letting it happen. You were allowing democracy to corrode and die because at the time you thought it was worth it. Donald Trump was just too scary. Trump was an emergency, so we had to suspend the Constitution and make this into an unfree country. We had no choice. But now that he's in office, some of these people are apparently having second thoughts now. But why now? What exactly is going on here, and why is everyone suddenly saying the same thing at once? We can answer the second part of that question with absolute certainty. Everyone in the Democratic Party sounds exactly alike because message discipline is what they do. It's who they are. No one in the party thinks independently. That's not allowed. everybody in the group must say the very same thing in concert with everybody else in the group all the time, period. It's like a North Korean singing troupe. Deviationists are punished. Think for yourself, even for a second, and you are denounced as a conspiracy theorist who thinks horse dewormer is medicine. You see it every day. We can give you a million examples of this. Our producer, Tom Fox, the genius who finds our tape every night for this show, often says he's got the most repetitive job in television because everybody on every channel sounds exactly the same all the time. Here's one recent chorus of dummies.
Lies that would bring thousands of angry people to the Capitol for one of America's darkest days.
Became one of the darkest days in American political history.
The very next day was one of the darkest days in this nation's history.
To one of the most dramatic and dark days in American history.
One of the darkest days in U.S. history. This was one of the darkest days in American history, and we expect the president to say just that.
Now, all these very same people are simultaneously trashing the president they got elected and have defended through everything for a year. Why? Now, we're not alleging an intentional conspiracy here. We don't take horse dewormer. We're not saying there was a secret conference call between Jeff Zucker, Joy Reid, and the staff of the Atlantic magazine. Who'd even want to endure something like that? More likely, it's a conspiracy of instinct. For all the talk you hear of diversity, there is precisely zero diversity in our national media. People may have different skin tones or different sexual interests. Not relevant. They're all from such similar backgrounds, with such similar beliefs and values and life experiences that their gut reactions to everything have aligned into perfect synchronicity, like menstruating teenagers at summer camp. They speak as one because on the deepest level, they're indistinguishable from each other. But still, you wonder, there's got to be some kind of political point to this. There's got to be. No one at CNN is ever going to undermine the long-term prospects of the Democratic Party, at least not intentionally. If they snatch the walker from Joe Biden's hands, and that's exactly what they're doing, who do they think is going to take over when he falls? It's a good question. We don't know the answer, but to answer it and other mysteries, we're joined by one of the smartest media watchers we do know. Batya Ungar-Sargon is the deputy opinion editor of Newsweek, and she joins us tonight. Thanks so much for coming on. So my level of understanding of this is only that it's amazing, but I don't fully understand exactly what we're seeing here. What do you think we're watching?
You know, Tucker, one of the things I really appreciate about your show is that you're not afraid to talk about class. We have a huge class divide in America that's separating out, highly overeducated, affluent, progressive elites from the working class and the middle class. And the Democrats and Joe Biden and their media are increasingly very much on the side of the highly educated, progressive elites. And I think that you're really seeing this come out on issues like the vaccine mandate, whether schools should be closed, whether children should be in masks, whether you as a parent have a right to say what your child should be studying. On all of these issues, these have divided working class Americans from these highly educated progressive elites. Right. And they are so unpopular as a result. The popularity of the president is in the toilet. The popularity of the Democratic Party is in the toilet because regular Americans, middle class Americans, working class Americans just don't agree with them on any of these issues. They are divided by class. And I think that what we're seeing here is, the media's attempt to essentially scapegoat Joe Biden for their own complicity in being on the wrong side of America's class divide, Tucker.
God, I think that's so smart. That's exactly, and it's by instinct. They realize this isn't going to work at all, and I want to get out of the way of this thing before it collapses on top of me. I mean, maybe it's that simple.
I think that there is a huge credibility gap with the media right now. You're seeing CNN just hemorrhaging viewers, even the New York Times. All of these outlets are just totally failing to convince Americans to trust anything they have to say. They have so little influence, and so they try to peddle their own economic interests and get Americans on board with that. And Americans are sort of saying, no, those are your economic interests. They're not ours.
Right. It's private equity against everybody else. It's unbelievable. And I really appreciate your point out. Batya Ungar-Sargon, thank you very much of Newsweek.
Thank you, Tucker.
So today is Martin Luther King Day. We wanted to recall a moment when our current president put everything in perspective for us, putting the past in perspective with the age we're living through right now. This is from June of 2020.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
So George Floyd's death had a bigger effect than Martin Luther King's death. Now, the obvious response is to laugh at Biden. He's so senile, he doesn't understand the difference between Martin Luther King and a drug addict who committed home invasions. Okay. But actually, Joe Biden has a point. That's true. When Martin Luther King was killed in April of 1968, this country erupted into race riots all across the country. Those riots were horrible. They were destructive. Many people died. Many cities never recovered. But our leaders at the time understood that race riots were bad. Big businesses didn't fund the killings with charitable grants. No city voted to defund its police department. The authorities didn't let mobs torch courthouses or assault the White House. No one in charge announced we needed to fight injustice by destroying the nuclear family. In 1968, crazy as that year was, all of that would have been considered insane. And it's still insane and destructive. But now our leaders are doing it. So yes, as a historical matter, the accidental death of a violent criminal, George Floyd, turned out to be more significant than the murder of a legitimate civil rights leader, Martin Luther King. And that's one measure of where we've come in 50 years. So a billionaire donor to the Democratic Party, an NBA owner, just admitted out loud that the genocide of Uyghurs in China interests him not even a tiny bit. It's beneath his concern, as he said on tape, which we'll play you. NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom is here to respond to that straight ahead on a special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight.